Mr. Miracle, issue number 2. This series, man. Oh, this series is something else. I wanted to do a video back on it on issue 1 back when it came out, but I don't feel like I would have been able to do like any justice to it whatsoever. I still don't know if I can do this series any justice because this is such a mind screw of a series. But I'm going to try. So in the first issue, Scott Free, aka Mr. Miracle, attempted suicide. Um, he like started hallucinating. I mean, he like sees one of his friends, and he's carrying conversation with them. But then his wife informs him that his friend's been dead for a couple of years. He gets beat up by Orion. Like Orion just basically shows up and just beats him up and considers that quote unquote training. And then at the end, Orion basically calls his wife, Big Barda, and Mr. Miracle to war. And we start off, and we get, man, this artwork is just really weird. Like, usually I'm not a fan of this kind of art style, but because of the way that this story is, I think it fits perfectly. Like, I'll get into that a little bit, but basically, we start off with the parademon eating some kind of corpse, and then his head gets blown off by Mr. Miracle, and then we just get basically a fight where we see Mr. Miracle battling parademons, and then after he kills the group, Orion tells him like set some new coordinates, and then he goes there and he fights them. And then after he destroys them, Orion gives him more coordinates, and he goes and he fights them, him and his wife. And it's just basically it becomes repetitive, and even the way that the art is depicted, it's not depicted like with cool like panels or anything. It's depicted very like old school Watchmen style with just like a bunch of squared panels. So the panels are a bit repetitive. The him just basically doing the same thing over and over again, like he's going to different locations fighting parademons, but it works because the way the issue is portraying these battles, it's not portraying the fight as something spectacular or something amazing. It's portraying the fight as basically like a war. Like it's tiring. It takes a task emotionally, mentally. It's you know, it's physically, mentally draining. So the panel setup like fits that, where it's not like watching an action movie where uh you have cool panels, you have like dynamic camera angles or anything like that. It's just same old square panel over and over and over and over again with just little different action scenes. Like maybe in one scene he's kicking. In fact, they'll even drag things out where they'll have like one moment where Mr. Miracle gets tackled, and then we just see him kind of just almost doing like MMA stuff where he's trying to get out of a ground grapple kind of thing. It's very I really enjoy it. Like I don't know if I'm doing it justice explaining it. Maybe showing a little bit of it. I don't want to show too much of I'm trying not to show too much of comic books when I review them, just so I can not get copyright strike. But yeah, it works. I mean, there'll literally be like, look at this panel right here where we have Mr. Miracle disappearing, and I mean this needs maybe one, two panels at the most, but they drag it out for 6 panels, and it works. So after a long day of fighting, we see Mr. Miracle and his wife Barda just covered in parademon blood, and uh, like basically Mr. Miracle is like trying to take a shower, but he doesn't know how it works. Meanwhile, Barda is just, you can tell she's just mentally drained. So then we cut to the throne room where we see Orion, who is apparently the new High Father, and Barda and Orion are meeting him, and I guess we kind of see some defiance in Mr. Miracle, or either that, or he's just, his mind is just wandering, which also makes sense because well, I'll get to that in a bit, but basically, Light Ray's next to him and kind of telling him that the new High Father, it's customary to kneel when you meet him, or actually, rather, it's required that you kneel. So Barda and Mr. Miracle just kind of like look at him. Orion stares back. And then they draw this scene out for multiple panels where Orion's just kind of standing there, and then Barda finally kneels, notices her husband isn't, and she pulls him down into a kneeling position as well. And Orion basically is informing them in the situation that while you guys have fought hard and won on the west, Darkseid's forces on the east have defeated 3 of their advances, and basically they lost 250,000 troops so far in the campaign, and 7 of our brother gods. Orion tells them that the success of Darkseid's armies is because of Granny Goodness, who, for those of you who don't know, Barda and Mr. Miracle were raised on Apocalypse by Granny Goodness. Orion tests them with going to Granny Goodness, and because she'll let the 2 of them like get close to her because she like raised them, so there'll be like some trust there even if they're on opposite sides of the army. And Orion wants Barda and Mr. Miracle to use that trust to betray Granny Goodness and kill her. That way they can like basically weaken one of Darkseid's greatest generals, I guess. We cut to Big Barda and Mr. Miracle sleeping when all of a sudden Metron shows up, and he just keeps repeating, "Scot-free, you are not to know the face of God." I'll be honest, that's kind of a freaky thing to see. Just imagine you're in bed with your wife, trying to fall asleep, and the fucking dude shows up in a lazy boy screaming, "You're not to know the face of God. Do you understand? You're not to know the face of God." And he just says that over and over and over again. But we cut to the next day where Mr. Miracle and Barda create a boom tube, and then they go to Apocalypse where they see Granny Goodness. And see, here's I guess I'll show the whole page for this. I also try not to show full pages, but just to kind of give you an idea of like repetitiveness. They have a whole page, 9 panels. All the panels are like exactly the same in terms of their size and shape, and even what they depict is pretty much exactly the same. The only thing that changes is Granny Goodness' expression slowly changes from like a frown to a smile. And this comic does this a lot. I believe, I can't remember if it did it also in the previous issue. I mean, it's been like a month since that one came out, so I don't remember. But it does it a lot in this. And like I said, like usually that kind of stuff will like annoy me and kind of put me off, but it works for the story it's trying to convey here. It's kind of funny because these are generals from 2 different armies who are at war with each other, and yet like Granny Goodness actually treats them as if they were like her kids. And it's kind of funny because, well, Granny, like we cut to like Granny Goodness's tent where they're eating, I guess, dinner or something. And Granny Goodness is like sharing like childhood stories about like, when she was raising them. But they are just like terrible stories. Like, remember that time when I beat you? Remember that time when, I withheld water from you for weeks? Like, it's just like, like, I mean, yeah, like, there's like a panel where Granny's like, "Remember that time I didn't let you have water for 2 weeks, Barda? Goodness, you screamed and cried like a child, but you were already 4. Granny, please, you were adorable." Like, it's like, holy shit, that's terrible. And as they're doing this, Stormforge, who I'm not necessarily sure who he is he one of the new gods? I'm assuming he has to be someone kind of popular if they're pointing out his name. But yeah, he's sitting next to Granny Goodness, and he's like tied up, and he's basically being starved to death. Like Granny's like starving him to death, and she's like, "But I like to have him watch others eat. It's so silly." Like, Jesus Christ. It's kind of funny because like she's treating them like a good host would. Like, she's being nice, she's hugging them, she's feeding them, but like the story is like juxtapositioned with terrible stories of like the things that she made them do when they were kids. And just the fact that I mean, she literally has a starving person sitting next to her that she refuses to feed and likes to make watch other people eat as she slowly starves him to death. It's just crazy. But also like I like this page as well. I don't know if I want to show it. I'll show a little bit of that, but I don't want to show too much because like I said, I don't want to be showing too much of this issue in terms of the panels because I want you guys to see some of it yourself. But we almost get like an old school style where we have a splash page divided into 9 separate panels where like the background stays the same, but we see Barda and Mr. Miracle like sneaking across through the panels, taking out parademons as they sneak into Granny Goodness's tent. And as soon as they enter the tent, Granny Goodness shoots Barda in the head and knocks her out. And basically, Granny Goodness is like, "Quick, Scott, follow me." And she, like, it looks like she's kind of like freaking out. She's like, "Did Metron visit you last night?" And Mr. Miracle is kind of like, "Yeah, but I wasn't sure if that was a dream or not." And Granny Goodness is like, "Good, good. There's something you need to know." Basically, Orion was setting you up. Like, he informed Granny Goodness that, he believes that Barda and Mr. Miracle are going to break the peace at a conference, and so he purposely sent Barda and Mr. Miracle to try to kill Granny Goodness, but he already informed Granny Goodness about what they were going to do, that they were going to try to betray you, and basically he wants Granny Goodness to kill Barda and Mr. Miracle, I guess, to get them out of the way. So Orion comes across like a huge douchebag in this, which is kind of interesting because I'm currently also reading Hal Jordan, and he's not he's not portrayed like that in that issue. So this is like, I don't know if this is considered canon or not. I'm assuming not, because I would think the Hal Jordan one is more canon, and this is just kind of like its own Elseworld side story. But yeah, so basically Orion's a douchebag who is sitting on the throne demanding people kneel to him, who doesn't seem to give a crap when 250,000 of his soldiers die and some of his godly brothers die. He purposely sent Big Barda and Mr. Miracle to get killed. I mean, Granny Goodness even says, like, he wanted me to kill you, Scott. And like, basically she tells Mr. Miracle that she has always been loyal to the High Father, the real High Father, not Orion, but Mr. Miracle's actual father, and that the High Father wanted Mr. Miracle to have the throne, not Orion, because Orion's the son of Darkseid, but Orion was raised by a High Father, and Mr. Miracle is actually the son of the High Father, but he was raised on Apocalypse by Granny Goodness. But yeah, Granny Goodness says, the High Father wanted you to have the throne, and how she was always working for the High Father, even when she was like on Apocalypse. She always was working for the High Father. Like, she's the one that told the High Father that Darkseid has the anti-life equation, and she tried her best to like basically keep Scott safe and protected. And then she, this is kind of like a weird bombshell. I'm still kind of confused in this moment, but she says, "The prophecy, Scott, it's the prophecy that compels them. Darkseid can only die by the hands of his son." And Mr. Miracle is like, "The prophecy? Darkseid's son? Orion is Darkseid's son." And Granny Goodness says, "Is he, Scott? Is he?" As she touches him on the face. Kind of hinting that maybe Mr. Miracle is actually the son of Darkseid instead of Orion. That's what I like. At first, I saw that's kind of what I was thinking, but then I'm like, why did she say the High Father meant for you? Oh, actually, I'm going back and I'm reading this. It says the High Father who meant for you, my own child, to have his throne. So is Mr. Miracle the son of Darkseid and Granny Goodness? I know in the original he's the son of the High Father, but in this, are they hinting that Mr. Miracle's the real son of Darkseid and Granny Goodness? Or is she just saying my own child because she raised them? It's kind of confusing, but I'm very intrigued. But yeah, Mr. Miracle says, like, Orion is Darkseid's son, and then Granny Goodness says, "Is he, Scott? Is he, or are you?" And then all of a sudden she gets bludgeoned in the head by a metal pipe, and Barda just beats her to death. And then Barda creates a boom tube to New Genesis, and Mr. Miracle and Barda go through it. And in the final pages, like, it cuts to like the bean face of Granny Goodness, and that's how it ends. And yeah, this whole series is a mind screw because you don't know what's real and what's not, because like I mentioned earlier, Mr. Miracle has hallucinations. He has conversations with people that aren't there. So you don't even know if like this conversation he had with Granny Goodness is real or not, or if she was saying something else, or if maybe she wasn't even saying anything at all. And, they just like, immediately stormed the tent, and Big Barda just beat the shit out of Granny Goodness. Like the whole Metron. Like he arrives, he screams, "You're not supposed to know the face of God," and then he kind of disappears, and it's kind of like, did that really happen or not? But then Granny Goodness kind of confirms that it did happen by saying, "Did Metron visit you last night?" So yeah, this is like, this is such a mind screw of a series, and the fact that I'm not completely knowledgeable on the new gods probably doesn't help. But I am loving it so far. It's so freaking interesting, and like I'm having fun trying to digest what's going on and what's real and what's not. And yeah, I'm loving this series so far. I have not been able to. And the good thing is, I think a lot of people are, because have not been able to find any physical copies of this. I've gone to my local comic book store multiple times, and every time it's always sold out. I've had to basically buy the digital versions because of that, which kind of sucks because I would like to get my hands on a physical copy of these issues. But but yeah, freaking amazing series. One of my favorites to read, just because like I said, I'm so like intrigued on trying to figure out what's going on. Like the whole Tom King is amazing as a writer, and like even though this kind of art style isn't usually my kind of thing, and I'm not really a fan of these panel setups, I do really enjoy it just because of two reasons. A, it works with for the writing, and B, it is a nice throwback to old classic Jack Kirby stories where he used a lot of the squared panels. So yeah, this is like a very amazing series. If you can find a physical copy, get it immediately. If you're lucky enough. If not, then get the digital versions and just freaking read them and enjoy them, because they are great. So yeah, that's Mr. Miracle number 2. Hope you guys enjoy, and I'll catch you guys next time. Later.